All right, you're welcome back. This is the morning show on Arise News. And like, if you've been following us, quite a number of issues we're going to be looking at this morning. But we're starting off with the 2019 Finance Bill, which is now an act. It was last week signed by President Muhammadu Buhari, and that singular move has generated lots of reactions from different quarters. And also the controversy surrounding the adoption of the eco-currency by the ECOWAS nations seems to have thickened in the last few days, especially with the rejection of same by English-speaking countries.
Absolutely. Now, we are joined by Felix Oloyede. He's a financial journalist, and he will take us through these developments. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Oloyede. Thanks for coming on the morning show.
Good to have you on the show.
Now, let's get talking about this. I'd like to start with the fact that this is not new. You know, we've seen how we have the Finance Bill going in line with the, Appropriation Act as well, just coming together. And we've seen past military regimes as well do this. So for a lot of Nigerians, it's nothing that they're surprised about, even if this is the first time it's happening significantly in the last 2 decades. I would like to talk about in terms of how it is beneficial to the Nigerian. How does this help them? Is this favorable? Looking at the VAT being going from 5% to 7.5 as well, is this something that, they should be happy about?
Yeah, if you look at the act properly, the gains there outweighs the discomfort.
Okay.
And you will note that no pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain.
That's
So
what
we need to sacrifice some things to be able to gain more in the long run. And you will note that it favors those who are in the middle class and the lower rung, because a lot of things have been reformed. They are trying to harmonize our tax laws. We've been having problem with our tax laws. And the bottom line, if you look at it, is government wants to raise more revenue.
Yes.
Wants to find a way of cutting down our debt. So those are some of the things that brought about this act.
Okay, now, you know what? For the benefit of our viewers, maybe we should even break it down, if you can help us, pin it down to the objectives of this finance bill that's been signed into law, what government hopes to achieve. Because a lot of people seem to be zeroing in on the VAT issue.
Yes. And
living out, like you have said, there's so many aspects of it that actually are positive, and the positives far outweigh the negatives.
Yeah.
So that means, on the one hand, government might actually need to, has its job cut out for it, to educate the Nigerians.
Exactly.
That, look, this is actually going to be in the best interest of Nigerians. But let's bring it down to the objectives and what government hopes to achieve with this finance.
Yeah, there are several objectives that government wants to achieve with this act. One is to ramp up revenue, which we have been struggling with. We have one of the lowest tax to revenue ratio, to GDP ratio in Africa, even in the world. When I did the calculation this morning, as our second quarter of 2019, our tax to GDP ratio was less than 5%. The record that is outside is that of 2017, which was about 5.7%.
Yeah, but a lot of experts like yourself would say that the real issue is not a problem of tax to GDP or even debt. Okay, that's another matter entirely. Of course, you're talking about tax to GDP as against, the other issues. But yes, pin it down for us.
So, like I was saying that the objectives, let's go back to the objectives. Another objective that government wants to do is to encourage the small businesses by exempting them. Once you don't have a turnover up to 25 million, you are exempted. That promotes entrepreneurship, encourage people to go into business. And those who make up to 100 million, they are asked to pay 20% instead of 30% it used to be. So it's an encouragement. The other part of it is that it promotes foreign investment, encourage them to invest in infrastructure and in capital market. So those are some of the things government wants to achieve.
Interesting. Now, would you say there are some loopholes? There could be, not there aren't at the moment,
definitely.
but there could be some loopholes with regards to the 25 million annual turnover. Companies that don't turn over up to 25 million annually exempted from the CIT. Would you say there could be some loopholes where some people might just decide to take advantage of that?
Well, I think government would have thought through.
Like, for
that.
example, someone setting up multiple companies and breaking it down into different facets in a way that accumulatively it's earning more than, but individually million. It's not earning.
I think there is a provision in that law that talked about deductible tax.
Okay.
And they made a provision that the government is able to track when you want to split your companies into the asset of your companies into smaller units so that you'll be able to exempt some of these taxes. So government has been able to look through it and put measures in place to tackle that problem. So I think they took time to get to this place. You know, if you remember, Kemi Adeosun started this
That's former finance minister.
Yes, started this. So we've been able to get to this place. But some of these loose ends, I think as we progress, we'll be able to tighten them.
As we go along.
Yeah.
Now, the private sector, which, you in essence have said that stands to gain quite a lot, from this. They're actually at the vanguard of condemning this Finance Act, saying that the federal government essentially is looking at the private sector as a cash cow.
Well,
how do you see that?
I've not really seen a private person who really came out to condemn this act because he gave them a lot of incentives. What you see is a lot of people, especially the commoners, talk about the VAT. That has been the major issues. Another issue they've raised is the issue of foreign companies that said that perform significant economic activities in the country. It did not state or pin it down to the activities it is talking about. It's up to the finance
minister to determine what those things are.
So those are some of the loose ends that people have talked about. But in terms of the bill itself, I've not seen.
But you would agree that with time, we've noticed that when something is not detailed to the very, very least, like if there isn't, this is what this is, it is now going to open avenues where we can now define what we want it to be. We've seen that happen, so shouldn't we have learned from, past mistakes? With the Constitution, there are some areas of the Constitution that are quite vague on certain issues. So people are now put in a position where it's debatable. Is this what it says? Could this be what it means? So shouldn't this have been very, very detailed?
Clear, without any ambiguity.
Exactly.
If not for what I just mentioned, the area of companies doing significant economic activities in Nigeria, I think they've been able to break every other part down. And this act is particularly touching a lot of tax laws.
Yes.
It talked about company income tax,
Petroleum,
talked about so it's a basket
petroleum
of
profit tax.
Yes, it's a basket of tax law, not just one. So they are not new legislation,
of course,
but it's just an amendment or improvement on what we have on
Let
ground.
me take you up on the issue of VAT, which is, what is the real troubling aspect.
Everybody's talking about
for the average Nigerian. There are some experts who have said, look, the low-income earner, the ordinary Nigerian on the streets, actually stands to benefit more from this increase from 5% to 7.5%. Do you agree with that? And in what ways, really, will the ordinary Nigerian benefit from this tax increase in VAT?
When I was talking about the objective of the Act, I did mention that it's to make our tax law more progressive. So if they are able to get from the rich, it is people who go for high-end products that are bound to pay more. If you buy food in the market, you are not going to pay tax, VAT. So if they are able to gather, if government is able to get more revenue, and put in road construction, put in hospitals, in other infrastructure.
That would be great.
That would be great.
That's a huge if.
Yes.
Exactly, that's a huge if.
You know why I use if?
Yes.
It's because we have the issue of trust in this country.
Okay.
A lot of us don't trust our leaders, and you can't blame us for that. They have bashed us, promised everything in the past, and they did.
So we're dealing with trust issues.
The government needs to build up our trust. They need to tell us that we are here to offer something different. Not until the people are able to see that, then you will continue to have this if and if.
Shouldn't that trust actually happen by default if, you know, people begin to see the roads tarred, the hospitals are improving, power situation is much better. Of course, by April, we have heard that power tariffs might go up. That's still out there. The discos are insisting. They're saying, no, come 1st April, we're going to increase electricity tariffs. But government, on the other hand, is saying there's no such plan in the pipeline. But there is another angle to all of this, which is the convergence of the fiscal and monetary policy.
Okay.
How is that going to help all of these projections if that really does happen? Because it looks like those handling the economy, especially on the side of the CBN, the central bank, and the managers of the economy, they seem to be doing their job to a large extent. But then there's a fiscal part on the side of government.
What?
Do you have any hope, or what are you expecting in that area for government to demonstrate that it really is serious this time?
Yeah, the fiscal authority need to do more than what they are doing.
Yeah.
We've seen the CBN delving into things he shouldn't do ordinarily, like pumping money in different sectors. Yes, they have the liberty to do developmental finance, but because we have a lot of gaps from the government, that is why the CBN is trying to. So they will need to increase their game. They need to do more in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the well-being of the people.
Yeah.
We have everything to be one of the best countries in Africa and in the world. But our leadership challenge is what we need to address.
Absolutely. Now, I would like to touch on what you said with regards to the luxury. What is luxury? Let's head out to a quick break. Ponder on that. We'll be right back with some more on conversations surrounding the Finance Act. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now, we still have Mr. Oloyede talking to us about what the perks, the pits and the falls of the Finance Act is. And just before we went to that break, I brought up the issue of luxury goods. You mentioned that this act is actually meant for the high-end buyers, the rich Nigerians in quotes. When they buy these luxurious goods, they're taxed 7.5 so that the lower income earners can actually have something to fall back on. But my question is, what is luxury goods? Because what we consider luxury, buying the basic necessities, bread, milk, that is basic.
May not be luxury elsewhere.
Well, if you look at it, those who go to the supermarket, if you look at the proportion, you see that you have more Nigerians buy from the roadside and informal shops than people who go to the
big supermarkets,
the malls. So it shows, that is why I said it is progressive. So you will see that it is people who are in the middle class and upper class who visit these malls. It is not the woman who sells pepper. And so government is trying to see that, okay, since they will need to take from certain people to cater for other set of people.
Should we now start buying roadside? I mean, if you can buy milk in this one, we can buy. Should everybody just move to the roadside?
Might as well just buy it on the roadside so that I don't.
There is opportunity cost.
Now, it seems the Nigerian government finds itself in a rather precarious situation where it has to do a balancing act between economic growth, achieving economic growth, closing the infrastructure gap, which is quite high, and reforming the fiscal, our fiscal laws. How can, the Nigerian government achieve this balancing act, at least in a way that is measurable in the next 1 year, if it will go into effect from February 1st? How can the Nigerian government achieve that balancing act to ensure that no one's aspect of it is left behind or left undone?
Well, what they need to do is you need to do a lot of infrastructure, something that will cushion the effect of this increase. If you have good roads, that means I'll spend less on transport.
Or even fixing my car.
Fixing my cars. If power is stable, that means I will not need to fuel my generator. I'm saving something. If there is improved security, I don't need to have a guard. So they need to handle this aspect, which the commoner or citizen shouldn't take care in the first place.
But there seems to be a looming shadow behind the Nigeria's debt profile. That's gone up to like 26
it's
or
about
so.
25.7
something trillion.
Yeah. That is why I said this bill is a child of necessity. In the bid to slow down the rate at which we borrow, they need to look for alternative source of income or revenue. And you know oil, you can't bang on oil. Anything could happen, and oil will slip.
Yeah, so much has been said about, improving non-oil exports,
diversifying
non-oil revenue and all of that. But with what you have seen so far, is there any indication that really we're moving in the direction of actually improving non-oil revenue?
Yeah, we are making progress, but slow progress.
Slow progress.
Because if you go, and the CBN has done a lot in promoting Buy Nigeria. Like one of the meetings I attended with the CBN, they talked about a lot of textile companies coming on board. And if they are able to increase their production, will feed West African countries.
Okay.
And maybe as we get it right, because the problem has been infrastructure.
Yeah.
The cost of production is still high.
Yes.
But if we are able to address some of these infrastructure deficits, then our cost will begin
That's
to
why I
go
asked the
down.
question specifically. I mean, is there an indication, or are there any indications pointing to the fact that, yes, indeed, Nigeria is taking, progressive steps, though some might say slow steps, but are we moving in the right direction at all?
We are. Because if you look at, this government has tried to some extent in trying to fix roads. They are working on the race. So if we continue on this trajectory and increase the rate at which we do these things, then we'll see that gradually the system will get better.
Okay, so if I understand what the foundation you've laid for us right now, let me just put it in perspective.
Okay.
We're looking at a situation of increase in the VAT tax, basically increase in how much people would have to spend. Yeah. And then we're looking at it against a growing economy, an economy that has suffered a lot of, defects, I would say defects, and we're still trying to go forward. So people are not particularly, financially stable as much as they would be. So they don't even have as much money to push out, but then they have to pay more. Now, my question is, as a financial expert, what would your advice be for people, especially business owners? How can they make this finance bill work in their favor? How can they ensure that they are doing what they're supposed to do as taxpayers? How can individuals as well ensure that, look, I'm not completely just, stranded. I don't end up stranded in this, because there are issues. Yes, this is good. In another 10 years, in another 20 years, the results of this will be impeccable. But let's understand that whenever you're starting something new, it's the people within
who bear the brunt.
They are the ones who...
Especially in the short term.
Exactly. So we're the ones who are going to suffer this. Well, in the next few years, people will start to be enjoying the benefits. We're trying to pay off debts as well. So it all boils down to the same thing. Paying off debts, we need more money, but the economy is not growing. So what do we do?
So like I said, that what will grow the economy is having more businesses operate.
Yes.
So if we are able to reduce tax burden in form of the company tax, SMEs used to pay tax even if you earn below 25 million. Yes. But now they don't have to. So you have something to grow your business.
And which means also that you'll be employing more.
More job creation.
Okay, that's amazing.
our capital market, they are trying to, okay, if you invest in capital market, you get tax rebate and the rest. That will grow our economy. And the other part is infrastructure. If you have more people, more private sector invest in infrastructure, the burden that government alone has been shouldering will begin to reduce, and government will have money to spend on other
and government also hopes to redefine the service sector, or the intangibles. I wonder if you can help us understand exactly what that means.
Well, if you look at our GDP, you see that the service sector has really tried to helping in boosting our GDP. So what they are trying to do is have more people deliver services, intangibles. That means you don't have goods physical goods that you are selling, but you can fix computer, you can develop software.
Of course.
Those are intangibles. So if you have some of our, that was what one of the ministers was talking about, exporting more doctors and you end this
and replacing.
So what we could do to make this grow fast is our educational sector. We need to fix it. We need to have people who have capacity. So if we don't
that's a long-term project. So that's a long-term goal. And the IMF, before we run off with this, the IMF in October of 2019 actually projected higher inflation in 2020, and it narrowed it down to the issue of higher taxes and all of that. And I'm wondering, the same IMF said, look, you need to increase your taxes. You need to increase your VAT. What do we make of this?
Well, one of my bosses used to say, he said, you will need to come to a point where you trade inflation for development.
Okay. Growth. So inflation may have to be the sacrifice.
Yes, it's opportunity cost. You cannot have the two at the same time.
Can't eat your cake and
so
have
you need to grow your economy. Cost will rise, but the proportion may not be the same proportion your economy is growing. So if our proportion is growing at, let's say 7%, and we have like 15% inflation rate, I don't think
it's not a problem. Let's quickly touch on the ECHO. Nigeria's position on the ECHO. 5 Nigerian, 5 other English-speaking countries have decided. Real quick, tell us, is this a good move? We've had different experts come out to say, oh, Nigeria should adopt the ECHO. Others saying it's this is a soft level of colonialism. So looking at the final decision on Nigeria on this ECHO, saying we're rejecting it, what are your thoughts on that?
Well,
in just one sentence, briefly.
Yeah. The reason basically is that the other countries didn't follow the guideline. It should be an independent currency.
When you say other countries, that's francophone countries. The 8 francophone countries against the 6 anglophone countries.
So, but they are now tying it to the French francs. So
as a replacement of the CFA.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is why we are not. And even if you look at it, we still have a long way to go with adopting that.
Mr. Oloyede, thank you so much for your analysis on the Finance Act.
Indeed. Thank you so much. We hope that our viewers are better enlightened about the positives as against the negatives of the finance.